Genesis had been around for such a long time that, I kind of feel a love-hate relationship with it. Living forever.
I mean, I was constantly on the phone to her and the phone kept going down and, we argued a lot.
Phil Collins, known for his legendary drumming skills and wonderful voice, is hailed as one of the greatest musicians of all time. From his work with Genesis to his solo hits like In the Air Tonight, Collins made history, but behind the fame, he hid some bold opinions that could get him canceled.
And there was a song called Intruder on that, which was basically my drum part, and a song he adapted to fit it.
In a recent shocking revelation, he decided to share those opinions, admitting there were 3 drummers he absolutely hated. Who are these 3 drummers, and what exactly made him feel this way? Join us as we look into the 3 drummers Phil Collins hated the most. Phil Collins' opinion on Neil Peart's drumming style. One of the most surprising names on Phil Collins's list of drummers he disliked was Neil Peart, the legendary drummer and lyricist of the band Rush. Known as one of the greatest drummers of all time, Neil amazed fans with his unique rhythms and mind-blowing drum solos, but Phil Collins had a different view. He saw Neil's style as too mechanical and lacking emotion. According to Phil, Neil was an incredible technician, but his focus on perfection took away the soul and groove from his playing. To Phil, music wasn't about hitting every note perfectly. It was about making people feel something. Isn't that shocking? How could Phil dislike someone who actually admired him? Stay tuned. The shocking part still lies ahead. The situation gets even weirder when you realize that Neil Peart looked up to Phil Collins in his early career. When Neil joined Rush in 1974, he completely changed the band's sound with his incredible drumming skills and deep, thought-provoking lyrics.
My determination was more important than talent early on. I think for most things you do have to have a bit of a knack, but I had to work so hard.
Over time, he became one of the greatest drummers in rock history. But what many people don't know is that Neil actually considered Phil Collins one of his biggest inspirations. In a 1980 interview, Neil openly praised Phil's unique style and creativity. But why would Phil criticize Neil's drumming, calling it too mechanical and lacking soul? Was it jealousy? Or did Phil simply prefer a more emotional style of drumming? Whatever the reason, this opinion didn't sit well with Rush fans, but Phil stood by his words, believing that music should come from the heart, not just technical skill. The irony is that Neil deeply admired Phil's work with Genesis and the jazz fusion band Brand X. He loved how Phil's drumming was both technical and musical, with smooth, flowing rhythms and creative drum fills. Neil also praised Phil's control over dynamics and his ability to make the drums sound melodic. One album that particularly inspired Neil was Genesis's Selling England by the Pound, released in 1973. Interestingly, Neil was lucky enough to watch Phil perform live with Genesis in 1974 at the Century Theater in Buffalo, New York. That performance left a huge impact on him, especially when Phil sang More Fool Me, hinting at his future as a lead vocalist. But here's where things get strange. Neil and Phil actually crossed paths twice in their lives, but never spoke a word to each other. The first encounter happened in the late 70s when Neil was in London recording with Rush. He visited a science fiction bookstore called Dark They Were and Golden-Eyed in Soho. As Neil held the door for someone leaving, he realized it was Phil Collins, rocking a full beard and flat cap. Their eyes met. They nodded politely, and that was it. The second encounter was in the 90s when Neil was on a motorcycle trip across Italy, Tunisia, and the Sahara Desert. After reaching Geneva, Switzerland, Neil went to a hotel restaurant for dinner. Coincidentally, Phil Collins was sitting just a few tables away, but this time, Neil chose not to approach him, out of respect for Phil's privacy. 2 legends, 2 encounters, not a single word was exchanged. Strange, right? Despite Phil's criticism, Neil never stopped admiring him. Both were huge fans of jazz legend Buddy Rich. In the 90s, Neil recorded a tribute album called Burning for Buddy, featuring famous drummers playing Buddy Rich's music. Neil even invited Phil to join the project, but Phil was too busy with his solo career at the time. Yet, Neil's tribute album actually inspired Phil to form his own big band. In 1998, Phil performed with Buddy Rich's big band in a special concert that became a documentary called A Salute to Buddy Rich. There's one more cool detail. Neil once revealed that the opening drum fills in Rush's Time Stands Still from the 1987 album Hold Your Fire were inspired by a Genesis song. Neil heard a quick timbale fill on an old Genesis record and spent hours practicing to perfect it. Funny enough, he later found out that the original fill wasn't even played live. It was done by slowing down the tape in the studio. In the end, Neil Peart may have admired Phil Collins, but Phil simply never vibed with Neil's style. Still, their strange, silent connection and shared love for drumming will always be one of the most interesting stories in rock history. Phil Collins's opinion on Buddy Rich's drumming style. Surprisingly, another drummer who found himself on Collins's bad side was none other than Buddy Rich, a jazz drumming prodigy and band leader whose speed and precision are still celebrated today.
I love playing jazz. My first introduction to jazz was listening to the Glenn Gray Casaloma Band in 1936-35.
While many view Rich as one of the greatest drummers in history, Collins saw him differently. To Collins, Rich's drumming was all about technical fireworks and ego, lacking the emotional depth that makes music truly connect with an audience. For Collins, drumming was not just about showing off skills, but about serving the song and creating an emotional connection with listeners. Rich's flashy style and self-centered approach to performance clashed with Collins's philosophy, making him one of the drummers Collins openly disliked. Was it that Collins never liked this legend? Hold your breath, you're just about to find out. Collins's feelings toward Rich were complex. Despite his criticism, Collins once admitted he was fascinated by big band music and was a huge fan of Rich's early work. He even bought all of Rich's albums and admired what he achieved in the jazz world. But as time went on, Collins grew disillusioned with Rich's approach to drumming and no longer idolized him. Their paths crossed again in 1998 when Phil Collins was invited to perform with the Buddy Rich Big Band as part of a tribute show organized by Rich's daughter, Kathy Rich. This happened more than a decade after Rich's death in 1987. The performance, which took place in New York, allowed Collins to pay homage to Rich while also showcasing his own drumming skills. During this period, Collins stayed in New York for additional live performances. On October 1st, 1998, he played a live-by-request show with his big band at Sony Studios. The next day, he performed at the Hard Rock Cafe for VH1's Hard Rock Live program. On October 3rd, he finally joined the Buddy Rich Big Band for the tribute concert. Collins's fascination with big band music and his decision to form his own big band was influenced by Rich. Despite his criticisms, Collins couldn't deny the impact Rich had on the music world. In an interview, Collins admitted that Rich was one of the reasons he decided to form a big band. He even recorded a tribute video to honor Rich's legacy. The tribute performance featured 12 songs with the Buddy Rich Band. Collins played drums on 7 tracks and sang on 1. Other drummers like Dennis Chambers and Steve Smith also contributed to the performance. The set list included jazz classics like Aragon by Sonny Rollins, No Jive by Bob Mintzer, and All Blues by Miles Davis. Collins' own hit I Don't Care Anymore was also performed with the band. Throughout the performance, Collins showed respect for Rich's legacy while adding his own unique style to the music, but he openly admitted that he couldn't keep up with Rich's speed on certain songs like Birdland and had to take a different approach. The tribute concert also featured historical clips of Buddy Rich's legendary performances, including his famous drum solo with the Tommy Dorsey Combo, a performance on The Steve Allen Show, and his iconic solo from Channel 1 Suite during a 1984 concert in Berlin. These clips showcased Rich's incredible talent and the impact he had on the drumming world. Despite his respect for Rich's skills, Collins revealed that he once turned down an opportunity to play alongside Rich and another legendary drummer, Tony Williams. Collins admitted he felt intimidated and superfluous, so he backed out of the chance to play with two of the greatest drummers of all time. Interestingly, Collins was also supposed to produce an album for Buddy Rich before his death, but Rich's sudden passing due to heart complications canceled those plans. Collins's mixed feelings toward Buddy Rich show the complexity of their relationship. On one hand, he admired Rich's technical abilities and his influence on big band music. On the other hand, he couldn't overlook Rich's ego-driven approach to drumming, which clashed with Collins's belief that drumming should be about serving the music, not stealing the spotlight. Phil Collins' opinion on John Bonham's drumming style. When it comes to legendary drummers, John Bonham of Led Zeppelin is often hailed as one of the greatest. Known for his thunderous drumming and innovative techniques, Bonham's style became iconic in the world of rock music, but once again, the legendary Phil Collins begged to differ. Unlike Bonham, who relied heavily on power and aggression, Collins believed drumming was about groove, dynamics, and enhancing the emotional depth of a song. For Collins, music should breathe and connect with listeners, not simply showcase brute force. What did Collins say about John Bonham? You're most likely at the edge of your seat, and it's about to get even better. Collins openly admitted that while Bonham's drumming was technically impressive, it often lacked the finesse and subtlety he valued. He felt that Bonham's heavy-handed approach overpowered the music, rather than complementing it. This opinion put Collins at odds with many rock fans who saw Bonham as a legend, but Collins insisted his critique wasn't personal, it was purely about artistic differences. Despite this, Collins couldn't deny Bonham's influence. He recalled being mesmerized the first time he saw Bonham perform live with singer Tim Rose at the Marquee Club. Bonham's bass drum technique left a lasting impression on Collins, but it didn't change his belief that Bonham's style prioritized force over emotion. Interestingly, after Bonham's death in 1980, Led Zeppelin disbanded, acknowledging that Bonham's drumming was irreplaceable. When Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin's lead vocalist, embarked on a solo career, he invited Collins to play drums during his early performances. During this period, Collins expressed his admiration for Bonham and offered to help Plant rebuild his career, but Collins remained firm in his opinion that Bonham's drumming style lacked the emotional depth he valued. This stance wasn't unique to Bonham, as Collins also criticized jazz drummer Buddy Rich and Rush's Neil Peart for their focus on technical showmanship over musical connection. Despite the controversy his words stirred, Collins never viewed his criticism as disrespectful. He believed music appreciation was subjective, and his critiques were rooted in his dedication to creating rhythms that resonated with listeners. Ironically, Collins' legendary drum break in the Air Tonight carried the same power and intensity that Bonham was known for, yet Collins executed it with restraint and emotion, qualities he felt Bonham's playing lacked. This balance of power and subtlety became a defining feature of Collins' drumming style and contributed to his success both with Genesis and as a solo artist. In the end, Collins' criticism of Bonham shows the diversity within the drumming world. While Bonham revolutionized rock drumming with his aggressive style, Collins focused on dynamics and emotional storytelling. Their philosophies couldn't have been more different, yet both drummers left an undeniable mark on music history. Collins' critique wasn't rooted in hatred, but in a fundamental difference in artistic values. And while his words may have angered many rock fans, they also showed what made Collins one of the most unique and influential drummers of his generation. Mother Teresa, a beacon of light. The world saw Mother Teresa as a beacon of light, a woman who was unwavering in her belief in God, her trust in humanity, and her mission to serve the poor. For decades, she was known worldwide for her selfless dedication to the poor, the sick, and the abandoned. Yet there's something few people know, a secret she carried in her heart until her final days. She had spent over 50 years caring for those whom society had forgotten: lepers, orphans, the homeless, and the dying. She has received global recognition, including the Nobel Peace Prize. But as her health began to decline, there was a heaviness in her heart, a burden she had carried for far too long. The people around her knew something was different in those last days, but they couldn't put their finger on it. As the world admired Mother Teresa's every move, there was an untold story that even her closest followers never knew. You might think that after giving her entire life to the service of others, no more mysteries would be left to uncover. But there was one final revelation, a secret that Mother Teresa shared only in her last moments, and it shocked everyone who heard it. And intriguing enough, this secret wasn't about her incredible work in the slums of Kolkata, nor the thousands of lives she touched through her endless acts of kindness. It was something she struggled with in silence. Imagine that a woman who prayed daily and lived entirely devoted to God had felt this way for over 50 years. How could this be? So, as she lay in her final days, weak but still determined, she felt the need to unburden herself of this secret. And those closest to her were left in disbelief when she finally spoke. So what was it? Was it fear, regret, or something more profound connected to her faith, which she had built her entire life? Stay glued, the story has just begun. Mother Teresa's life was nothing short of extraordinary. Born as Agnes Gonsha Boyakshu in 1910 in what is now modern-day Macedonia, no one could have predicted the immense impact she would have on the world. But from a young age, she felt a calling to devote herself to a life of service. Little did anyone know that she would grow into one of history's most iconic figures of compassion and selflessness. Her work was not just about giving, but also about transforming lives, lifting up the forgotten, and becoming a global symbol of hope, faith, and unconditional love. Mother Teresa didn't come from wealth or power. She wasn't born into a family of influence. Yet she changed the world through a straightforward principle: love. Her love wasn't just an abstract feeling. It was something she lived every day, especially for those who were the most neglected, the poorest of the poor. From the filthy streets of Kolkata, India, to the grand stages of the United Nations, Mother Teresa carried one message: every life has value, and every person deserves dignity and love. The turning point in her life came when she was 36 years old, working as a teacher in Kolkata. During a train ride to the Himalayan town of Darjeeling in 1946, she experienced what she called the call within the call. At that moment, she felt an intense pull from God, urging her to leave behind the comforts of her convent life and live among the poorest of the poor. This was not an easy decision. It meant abandoning everything familiar and secure. It meant walking into the unknown, but that was the Mother Teresa we knew. She wasn't afraid to step into the shadows. She left her comfortable life behind and dove into the heart of one of the world's most crowded and impoverished cities, Kolkata. What she saw there was overwhelming. The streets were filled with homeless children, the sick, the dying, and those society had cast aside. Most people looked away, but Mother Teresa couldn't. She saw them not just as beggars or outcasts, but as human beings, each deserving of love and care. With no money, resources, or grand plan, she began her mission by doing what she could, tending to one person at a time. At first, she had only a small abandoned building in which to work. It wasn't much, but to Mother Teresa, it was a place where love could grow. Her first patients were people dying in the streets, those who had nowhere else to go. She would carry them in, wash their wounds, hold their hands, and sit with them until the end. The care she gave wasn't just physical, it was deeply spiritual. It was about restoring dignity to people who had lost everything. As expected, word of her work began to spread, and soon, others wanted to join her. That's when she founded the Missionaries of Charity in 1950. The mission of the group was simple: to care for the hungry, the naked, the homeless, the crippled, the blind, the lepers, all those people who feel unwanted, unloved, uncared for throughout society, people that have become a burden to society and are shunned by everyone. Mother Teresa and her followers made it their mission to serve those the rest of the world had forgotten. But that's not all. What made her work stand out wasn't just that she was helping the poor, it was how she did it. She didn't just give them food or medicine. She treated each person with immense dignity and respect, no matter their condition, and always whispered comforting words into their ears. To her, every person, no matter how broken, was a reflection of God. She often said, "Each one of them is Jesus in disguise." That was her secret. She saw divinity in every human being, no matter their state. As her work continued to grow, so did the attention. Mother Teresa's unwavering commitment to the poor began to capture the imagination of people worldwide. She didn't seek fame, yet fame found her. She was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979, and when she accepted it, she didn't make it about herself. Instead, she used the platform to speak for those who had no voice, the millions of people worldwide suffering in silence. However, despite the accolades, the ceremonies, and the worldwide recognition, Mother Teresa stayed the same. She didn't allow herself to be swept up in fame. In fact, she often turned down opportunities to meet with world leaders and celebrities because she believed her time was better spent with the poor. She once famously said, "If you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one." To her, every small act of kindness made a difference. She believed that love could transform the world, no matter how small. But Mother Teresa's life wasn't without its challenges. She faced criticism for her strict religious views, particularly her stance on contraception and abortion. Some accused her of not doing enough to tackle the systemic causes of poverty. Others questioned the conditions in some of her care homes. But through it all, she remained focused on her mission. She was never deterred by controversy or criticism. Her focus was always on the person right in front of her who needed her help. Mother Teresa continued her work until her health began to fail in the 1990s. But even as her body weakened, her spirit remained strong. She continued to travel, to speak, and to serve. It wasn't until 1997, just months before her death, that she finally stepped down as head of the Missionaries of Charity. By then, her order had grown to include thousands of sisters working in over 100 countries, all dedicated to following in her footsteps. Mother Teresa died on September 5, 1997, but her legacy remains. Her Missionaries of Charity continue to serve the poorest of the poor worldwide, from Kolkata to New York, Africa to Europe. But the revelation she made just before her final breath is now shaking the world. And this is the moment you've been waiting for. Mother Teresa's hidden struggles. Mother Teresa is known worldwide for her incredible work with the poor. Her public image was that of a saintly figure, full of love and compassion. She had a warm smile and a gentle voice, and many believed she had a direct connection to God. But many people don't know that Mother Teresa faced a hidden struggle behind that image. For decades, she battled with a deep spiritual darkness that left her feeling alone and lost. This spiritual struggle began in the early years of her mission. Mother Teresa wrote many letters to her friends and fellow sisters, revealing her feelings of emptiness. In 2007, a book titled "Come Be My Light" was published, sending shockwaves worldwide. This book was different from anything else written about Mother Teresa. Instead of focusing solely on her incredible life of service and compassion, it revealed a deeply personal side of her, filled with spiritual struggles and profound darkness. The letters included in the book were personal and raw. Mother Teresa wrote about feeling a deep longing for God, but unable to feel His presence. She questioned whether her work mattered and whether God was listening to her prayers. In her own words, she described feeling like she was in a darkness that never lifted, a dryness in her soul that made it hard to believe in God's presence. This was shocking to many who had seen her as a saintly figure, a woman who radiated peace and love. And for someone who dedicated her life to spreading love and faith, these doubts were hard to comprehend. Many who admired her began to wonder, how could someone so devoted to God experience such profound spiritual struggle? This is where the mystery lies. Mother Teresa's work brought her face to face with immense suffering. She saw hunger, sickness, and death daily. It would be easy to think that such a calling would bring her closer to God. However, the suffering around her made her question her own faith. How could she serve a loving God when there was so much pain in the world? This internal conflict caused her much distress. It was a painful contradiction. She carried this burden alone for many years. However, the revelations in Come Be My Light sparked many reactions. Admirers felt a sense of betrayal, struggling to reconcile the image of Mother Teresa as a devoted servant of God with the reality of her inner turmoil. Critics seized the opportunity to question her faith and sincerity. One of the most vocal was Christopher Hitchens, a famous writer and speaker who did not believe in God. He took advantage of the revelations about Mother Teresa's struggles to paint her as a hypocrite, arguing that she couldn't be a true saint if she felt so lost. They claimed her life of service was not genuine, suggesting she was merely trying to cover up her inner pain by helping others. That's not all. He also argued that her actions were motivated by her need to mask her depression, claiming that she used the charity to distract herself from her inner turmoil. However, this view misses a crucial point. Mother Teresa's deep connection to God fueled her desire to help others. She often said that serving the poor was serving Christ himself. Her struggles didn't lead her to lethargy. They inspired her to work harder and care more deeply for the suffering. But amidst this, others saw her struggles as a testament to the challenges many face in their spiritual journeys. They argued that her honesty made her even more relatable and human. This debate about Mother Teresa's faith was not just about her personal struggles. It opened up a conversation about spirituality, doubt, and the human experience. Many people struggle with their faith, especially in difficult times. For some, these doubts can lead to deeper connections with God. For others, they can feel isolating and painful. Mother Teresa's experiences highlighted that even the most devoted individuals can have moments of weakness and doubt. Her letters showed that faith is not always a straight path. It can be filled with twists and turns. But despite the criticism, many people still found strength in Mother Teresa's story. Her letters reminded them that faith is a journey and that everyone experiences challenges. Her dedication to serving others never wavered, even during her darkest moments. She continued to care for the poor, the sick, and the dying, demonstrating that love and compassion can exist alongside doubt. People began to see Mother Teresa differently. Some saw her as a saint and a human being with flaws and struggles. She wasn't perfect. She was a woman who faced profound challenges, but chose to dedicate her life to helping others regardless of her internal battles. Her journey inspired many who struggle with their faith, showing them that it's okay to have doubts and that love can shine through in the darkest of times. Come Be My Light also sparked conversations about mental health and spirituality. Mother Teresa's struggles resonated with many who deal with depression and anxiety, highlighting the importance of addressing mental health in religious contexts. Her experiences encouraged people to talk about their struggles openly, showing that seeking help and still holding on to faith is possible. But what if I tell you that the revelations in Come Be My Light sparked essential discussions about mental health and led people to talk about the profound spiritual challenge known as the dark night of the soul? This idea, beautifully explained by St. John of the Cross, speaks to a period of deep spiritual struggle where one feels abandoned by God. Let's delve into how St. John's teachings influenced her journey through this painful experience and shaped her extraordinary dedication to the poorest of the poor. Her struggles with the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is a painful journey encountered by many people of faith. It is a time when the light of God seems distant, leaving individuals feeling lost and alone. This concept is most famously described by St. John of the Cross, a 16th century mystic who wrote about his own experiences of spiritual suffering. His teachings shed light on this journey, showing how it can lead to a deeper faith. For Mother Teresa, this idea played a significant role in her spiritual life, helping her navigate her deep struggles. During this time, she felt as though she was in a dark tunnel with no light at the end. St. John of the Cross described the dark night of the soul as a process that can lead to spiritual growth. He taught that this time of suffering is not a sign of weakness or failure, but a chance to purify the soul. She also undertook medical training for a period of 6 months at the Holy Family Hospital, Patna, to equip her for the work ahead. Satisfied that she had what it took, she ventured into the slums and founded her organization, the Missionaries of Charity, her foundation and its work. As soon as she stepped out on this audacious journey, a group of women who were equally passionate about the vision joined her. Together they started an open-air school in Motijil to educate the children of the poor. As a symbol of her work, she took up the uniform of a white cotton sari hemmed with blue tapings, which she wore all of her life. Despite the hunger and lack of income that came with the life she chose, she didn't give up even though she felt tempted many times to return to the convent during the first months. Do you believe that? In her words, she felt the pain of the destitute who had no home, the moment she had to walk till her arms and legs ached while searching for a home. This was her way to prove that she did it out of free choice and love for God. Aware of the plight of many on the verge of dying due to a lack of medical care, she established a home where the dying destitute could be cared for with the help of officials in Calcutta. Lucky to find an abandoned Hindu temple, she made the site into a mini hospital in 1952, which she named the Kaligat Home of the Pure Heart, after first naming it as the Home for the Dying. Despite being a Catholic nun, she didn't allow her faith to limit her service of love to anyone, as all kinds of people were received into the home. She believed that people who didn't have the privilege of living a humane life should at least be treated like angels who were loved and wanted before their passing. With this, she ensured that those of the Muslim faith had the Quran read to them, the Hindus were given water from the Ganges, and those of the Catholic faith got extreme unction before their death. The death and sainthood of Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa of Calcutta died from a heart attack on September the 5th, 1997, after a life dedicated to helping the poor and dying.
The death of Mother Teresa on September 5th, 1997, sent shockwaves around the world. Although she died at a good age of 87, it seemed that many were not prepared enough for the day of her passing. Yet, things began to take a major twist as people began to identify her as a saint whom we were fortunate to have walked the earth. Despite the criticisms, many still constantly prayed to her on different occasions. It was on one such occasion that an Indian woman named Monica Besra came forward claiming that she was miraculously healed of an abdominal tumor after praying to Mother Teresa to pray for her. This was the first miracle, and to be recognized as a saint, at least 2 miracles had to be identified following her death. Although this first miracle happened only a year after her death, the Vatican came to recognize it in 2002, and she was beatified as Blessed Teresa of Calcutta on the 19th of October the following year. Another family recorded a healing after praying to Mother Teresa. A Brazilian, Marcílio Andrino, claimed to be healed of a brain infection that lapsed into a coma. Whilst he was brought in for emergency surgery, he opened his eyes, free of pain and symptoms after his family and friends' prayer. This statement was submitted to the Vatican by the Missionaries of Charity Father in 2015, and Mother Teresa was canonized as a saint the year after. This happened only a day before the 19th anniversary of her death. For many, this was a pivotal event, and many attended the canonization mass held in her honor. However, some have pushed that the claims that she underwent a rite of exorcism were intentional. There's an assumption that the inner troubles she faced and the exorcism rites are indicators of what to expect in the life of someone befitting to be called a saint. So, what do you think about these revelations from Mother Teresa's letters? Do you think her exorcism had anything to do with her sainthood? We would love to know your thoughts. Share with us in the comments, and thanks for watching this video until the end.